And thanks very much to for the presentations. A question for the CRU. Are you collecting data on prepay meters, and around prepay meters? When a prepay meter has been installed, are they smart meters? Because I'm worried about people who are suffering energy poverty kind of self-disconnecting, and is there a way that you know, with using a smart meter, can that be tracked? Can we collect that kind of information so that if people are self-disconnecting, that you know about it? Because you know, we have people die on the streets every winter in Ireland. You know, we don't want people dying in their homes as well. On top of that, and around that, I suppose, yeah, I'll get back to that actually. And another question around the energy poverty strategy that has expired, and you know, could we? I think we need one, you know, and I think we need to reach out to groups. And I'm pleased that you're extending the moratorium on vulnerable customer disconnections. But how do you classify that? Because that's an ever-increasing cohort of people who are vulnerable from energy poverty. Also. You know, I think the last time we had the Minister in, Minister, if you'd be interested in this as well, we talked about the fact that some travellers hadn't received the €200 electricity back. And whatever about, you know, being cold in your homes, anybody who's spent a night in a caravan during the winter, they're on a cold night, they're absolutely fridges, they're freezers, they're freezing, and we already had a tragedy in Carrickmines there. We don't want tragedies with travellers dying in their caravans. Another thing for the Minister as well, you know, we've been out and about, and the only story in town, well, apart from the bus in Scoil, is the energy costs. And I've been talking to a lot of small businesses, small SMEs, and they feel that while the red carpet is rolled out for data centres and FDIs, that there's very little for them. And there was, the European Commission announced approximately 200 million for Irish for businesses, and I'm just wondering, you know, we're going to need to add to that. There's going to need to be a financial support package for those. But when you look at, you know, we know the reason that you're all here today is because we're in the middle of an energy crisis, of a climate crisis, and we're talking about it from that aspect. And when you look at how data centres and, you know, these companies that are using an awful lot of electricity and a lot of energy. And you know, we have to, you know, we were talking earlier as well about decoupling gas from wind energy. As a Green Minister, I hope you're going to push this really, really strong in Europe, because people have to see a national dividend from the amount of wind farms, wind energy that we're able to produce in Ireland. There has to be some kind of a national dividend for companies working in Ireland. And there's a lot of people, I think bad faith actors as well, trying to muddy the waters around that, around the fact that those prices are coupled. And you know, I think that they should be decoupled. Okay. Also, if you could elaborate further on the plans you have for meeting 15% demand reduction, because you know, either we reduce our demand by 15%, or are we looking at rationing of electricity? If you could talk about that as well, please. Sorry.
Thanks, Deborah.
I know I've talked about my 2 minutes.
For the Minister,
I don't think I'm the only one.
Yeah, thank you very much. Firstly, on the combat energy poverty strategy, and while it didn't conclude in 2019, in fact it's been continuously implemented, but there is now a strategy review, our progress review and public consultation. It's out at this present time. We're going to get that delivered in time to influence budget decision making, which is going to be the critical part. There were very significant 3 tranches, I think, where we increase not just the fuel allowance but another mix of social welfare contributions, and I think that as well as the credits is going to be key to the response into the next year. For travellers family where it's on a halting site, my understanding is through the local authority that the energy credit payment or the billing payments are done. Now, if there is someone who has
Minister Noonan the last time he stood in for you, and we suggested that, and he was going to look into that. So that's
and what I don't know what he said here, but what I would say is if the local authority hasn't passed that on, then I think if you could give evidence or an example of that, because I think that should be done clearly in terms of, or made sure that they're eligible and get the payment. You can't have, it is universal payment, and particularly for those, as you say, the people who are at risk most this winter are those in less well insulated. Caravan obviously would be the top of that list. So we do need
to leave the heat on in the caravan all night.
You do,
cannot turn it off.
And you have to. They're the sort of customers that we do have to target. With regard to the demand reduction, I haven't received yet from GNI or from Crew. They might well offer in terms of any thoughts in terms of what our planned involvement in the 15% demand reduction. But as soon as I have that, I will share it with the committee and put it out there. Can I say one point where I think what you said is very correct? In my mind, there's been a lot of muddying of waters. People kind of, and this is what, going back to the chair said at the start about equating different issues. Some people have been saying there, oh, you know, one of these reasons these price rises is because of some of the green plans in the country, the move towards renewables and so on. That's absolutely untrue. The reality is that the best protection and what's to be gained for the Irish householders if we go in this renewables direction is that we're not held to ransom by a distant country, that we actually rely on our own power, and we do have comparative competitive advantage. Just come back to what Senator Boylan said earlier on. We will, in the long run, have a real competitive advantage in renewables because we're a windier country. We have got, and we've a relatively small population to a large land area, or land area, and an even greater area population, our area ratio, if you include our sea area. So everything in this crisis should drive us towards accelerating the delivery of renewables. That's what the European Union says, but also particularly applies here at home. It also makes the case for efficiency. That is the other great protection against reliance on imported fossil fuels. Our exposure here, our risk, the hit and hurt to Irish families is becoming because of our reliance on imported fossil fuels, where the price has been set because it's been used as a tool of war. And that's the reality. That's absolutely clear, abundantly transparently clear at this time. And no amount of people saying, oh, the reason we're in some difficulties is because of renewables or other efficiency policies. That's not true. The reason we're in difficulties is because of our reliance on fossil fuels. And
customers have to see that the fact that we are getting, people who are getting their energy from wind, from green energy, that there has to be a national dividend for that. We have to sell this and make people feel that they're getting the benefit from green
And one of the
energy.
benefits is it's only going to shade a certain percentage of the increase, but the fact that our PSO is now going negative, and actually every household is at 80, 90 euros
October, I think,
direct credit going back into every bill, and that, as Senator Boylan said earlier on, will head in towards a negative PSO. So we're actually saving householders money because of that presence of that renewables. But that's not going to cushion the blow, because the scale of the gas price increase is beyond compare.
And some kind of financial support for SMEs.
Again, I think such is the price increase that a whole range of businesses that previously wouldn't have seen their energy bill as being the real determining factor is going to start to take hold. If a business has a large number of refrigeration or heating, whatever different, I was using the example yesterday in discussions with the Taoiseach and others, take a small shop that might have difficulties because they've got various ovens, various refrigeration systems. A lot of those sort of companies are going to start to see real difficulty, and we will work with the Minister of Public Expenditure Reform and Finance and others to look to see what can we do to help. Because
Could I ask you, in terms of that, the Green Transition Fund, why are retailers not? I was talking to somebody in SuperValu there in Sallins and in Clane, and they were saying that they're not eligible to apply to update any products they have under the Green Transition Fund.
That's one of the issues that our emergency strategy group is looking at, working with the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. We do have to look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Cronin. Moving now to Senator Higgins.
Sorry, I asked you.
Oh, apologies. Sorry, there was a question for Mr. Melvin. Mr. McGowan. Okay, go ahead.
So just to address the question around prepayment meters, I suppose it's important to say that at the moment the existing prepayment meters aren't smart in terms of the prepayment meters for hardship. cases, they're not smart. The sort of lifestyle prepayment meters are smarter, but I think the customers you're particularly referring to are people who are in financial difficulty, and they would tend to be on the hardship prepayment meters. They're not smart.
Is there any plans to bring?
Yeah, I'm going to address that. So it is correct. People can self-disconnect in that scenario. Under the new National Smart Metering Programme, all the national smart meters are capable of becoming a pay-as-you-go meter if the customer wishes. It will be smart pay-as-you-go, which means that all customers will operate under a new system, and their energy usage at any point in time will be known. And and they can top up online, and then it will go straight to their meter, or they can top up via the shop. So they'll be able to go through the similar processes that they go through now. It'll be slightly different, but it is smart. There'll be a lot more rich data available. Now, the idea...
So you'll be collecting that data?
Yeah, but obviously data protection applies, and the use of that data is very much strictly controlled in terms of data protection law. But nevertheless, it is feasible that the fact that somebody had stopped consuming could be identified, but you'd have to have the right data protection arrangements in place for that. But that
okay, well, we might talk to you about that then, and try to make sure that we get that in place. An energy poverty strategy as well, I asked.
Yeah. So that was in relation to the moratorium on...
well, it's lapsed, hasn't it, the energy poverty strategy?
Yeah.
I think that's a government policy.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry.
Yeah.
We could certainly talk a little bit about the vulnerable customers,
yes,
though,
please.
because that's in our
And how are they?
area.
That's classified, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I think your question was how do you identify them? And in legislation, there's two categories. It's not financial vulnerability that's addressed. It's vulnerability, firstly, by reasons of, say, age or illness, to people who might be particularly vulnerable to disconnections during winter. And then the second critical category of people who are dependent on electrically powered assisted living devices. So those are the two categories. And there's a register of vulnerable customers. It's a self-declaration basis. So customers can register with their supplier under one or two, either of those categories, self-declaring their vulnerability and availing of the protections. And in fact, that's an area where we want to increase awareness of those protections. We don't feel enough people are registered. We don't think people necessarily identify themselves as vulnerable, even though they might benefit from those protections. So that's something that we can do better on, particularly this winter.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McAviley and Deputy Cronin. Moving to